Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Carter McSwaggy, and I am the one behind the one in 1,000 subscribers. And once again, I can't do this bit anymore. Once again, 2K has come back to do its yearly milking of the four udders of its cash cow. Those being NBA, PGA, like actual video games, and my personal favorite, WWE. Now, some of you may know that I'm a big wrestling fan. It comprises about 90% of my tweets that no one sees, and half of those are dedicated to spewing hatred at Cody Rhodes. But guess what? He's not on the cover of this one. The OTC Roman Reigns is, and with the Bloodline Showcase, I don't think I've ever been more excited for a yearly game than I was for this one. So let's see if WWE 2K25 is capable of breaking that mold. I want to start with the gameplay. I'm gonna be honest, there is a lot to talk about here, so here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna try my best to get through mainly just the basics, which on its own is still a mountain of information to go through. I'm gonna get through the fundamentals as fast as I can, but I can't make any promises that you won't be here for an hour. Here we go. Have you ever played WWE 12, 13, or any of the 2K games? Okay, so those are all the fundamentals. Thank you for bearing with me through all of that. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's the same game they've been making for a long time, and they make them yearly. They barely have time to do anything, so they barely add anything. Well, that's not true. Usually wrestlers start matches by actually wrestling and switching grappling positions to make the match have more momentum. This is referred to as chain wrestling, and for the very first time in history, WWE 2K implemented chain wrestling into their gameplay. At least I think it's the first time. I'm not sure, there's only one other game on the PlayStation Store, and it's not in there, and while I've owned a copy of 2K19 for years, I actually haven't checked that one out yet because of my phenomeноphobia, aka the fear of AJ Styles. There's also some problems that the old games had, like how you can only chain wrestle in very specific circumstances, pretty much only normal one-on-one matches. There's no combined singles entrances that wrestlers actually do when they team up, where one person will come out and do a little bit of their entrance, wait at the stage, and then their partner will come out and they'll walk down to their music. Some moves aren't accurate, like how people tap out of Gunther's sleeper hold, the one move that consistently knocks out people during matches in real life. There can only be 8 people in a match at once, so no 5v5 war games. And while this isn't a con, it is worth noting that this game does have a slower rhythm when compared to 2K24. But they also added some stuff, like underground matches you could do crazy stuff with, Bloodline rules matches with run-ins, new areas for backstage brawls, and intergender matches. So if you've ever wanted to see Braun Strowman kill Chelsea Green, or 7'3" Omos powerbombs Lena Vega onto asphalt,
oh my gosh, the table has imploded!
Go right ahead. Each of those assets do have problems, though. Of course, with giants fighting women who are 5 feet tall and have hair assets that the developers paid little attention to, there are gonna be some animation glitches. Backstage brawls are and have always been very repetitive and sometimes end sooner than you want. Same with underground matches, and with most of the roster, Bloodline run-ins are completely random. Speaking of, I want to talk about this roster because there are a lot of people in this game, but that doesn't really mean anything when you start to look at who's here. There are jobbers here that are not real and only from MYRISE. We have 2 versions of Alundra Blaze, a couple of DDPs, Becky Lynch from 2017 and 2018, and while I do love me some Roman Reigns and understand that he is the cover star, there is one from 2025, 2024, 2022. At least with Becky, there are different gimmicks. Why do we need 3 tribal chiefs? Xavier Woods is a tag team wrestler who has never won a singles title, despite both of his partners being world champions. And yet, his alter ego Zero from the MyRise of 2K24 is here for some reason. There are 2 versions of Carmella in this game, who is a wrestler that got released by the company in February, which, okay, I understand. That's like a month before this game came out. Of course, they weren't gonna get rid of all that hard work that they put into 2K25. Her last televised match at WWE was in March of 2023. Her last match, period? 6 days later. Question, what on earth is this? And you may think I'm being pessimistic or unwarrantedly negative over a good thing, that I should just enjoy the size of the roster instead of analyzing why it's that size. But frankly, when a game takes up 3 digits of gigabytes on my PlayStation,
I'd like the content to be worth it, especially because if you buy the base game, you will not get the entire roster. There will be wrestlers on your screen you cannot play as because they're restricted to the most expensive version of the game. And one of the biggest problems this whole game, but especially the roster has, is that because there's no wrestling offseason, every single game in this series is going to be outdated. AJ Styles and LA Knight both have their old themes by the band Def Rebel that nobody likes, even though they already switched back from them. It's the opposite with the Street Profits. They had a banger theme recently, but they had their Def Rebel theme in 2K24. But they just got back to their Def Rebel theme now that they're heels again, so guess which one is in this game? And again, there's nothing they can do about it, but it is a shame that the new Samurai Shinsuke Nakamura gimmick isn't in here. There's no heel Cena, and it especially sucks that the one game based around the Bloodline doesn't have Jimmy Uso as his Big Jim solo run. And the showcase about the Bloodline doesn't have Jay winning the Royal Rumble and possibly his first world title. They updated it to fix it, but I'm pretty sure that despite having the new IC title model with the blue accents, the graphic for it during title matches when this game was released was outdated. But they're also trying to get ahead and put 2 nights of SummerSlam in Universe mode even though there hasn't been one yet. But while all of that sucks, that is not the worst of this game's release timing. Logan Paul is a WWE superstar, and a very collaborative one at that, which means that just like in real life, almost every current arena in this game has a Prime hydration station. And it affected the showcase too. I'm sure I don't need to remind you all of the classic match between the High Chief Peter Maivia and George the Animal Steel, sponsored by Prime. I am surprised with how far they got in terms of racing against the clock. I fully did not think that they were going to be able to include the women's mid-card belts, but staying up to date is always going to be a losing battle for WWE 2K games. By the way, I mentioned that Jimmy Uso isn't updated, and I talked in depth about the roster, but now that we're in the technical side of this game, I feel like I should point out that in some areas they put in as minimal work as possible. Jimmy Uso is practically a one-to-one replica of him in the last game. They just threw a bandana on him and a new catchphrase on his shirt. They also messed with movesets and gave him a spear, which his brother does, but I don't think I've ever seen him do. Speaking of his brother though, it is cool to see Jay enter through the low poly crowd and how they'll throw up the ones with Roman or yeet with Uso, even though that is not how you do it. And speaking of his other brother, Solo Sikoa is probably the greatest example of just how much of an improvement has been made in the face models for this game. And Drew McIntyre is just as great an example of how much of a drop-off there has been in quality for the face models. It's cool the crowd will chant his and Punk's names, but that doesn't make up for the fact that he looks like melted plastic. This game is just not good on a technical level. Hair clips through the wrestlers' bodies. There's pretty frequent, albeit minor, screen tearing. It'll stop rendering eyes and just be empty sockets. Refs will just stand in front of the camera. There's only one male and one female voice for grunt sound effects. Fans will glitch through the barricade. The image for the WWE title is cut off at the top and bottom. Wrestlers will just pile onto the massive frozen dolls as they break the code and roll out of the ring during Royal Rumbles. Watch what I did with Gunther in this steel cage match. Again, this game toes the line of functionality. It is not great technically, but it does have some great technical features. There are things that have been there for a while that we've come to expect and take for granted. Blood spreading on the mat and body parts, setting up weapons in unique ways to crash through them, a solid UI, PLE-specific transitions, and on top of that, they added elements I really enjoy. Things like bruises and welts developing over time, digital screens glitching as you crash into them, and new moves like jumping off the barricade add to the realism and fun of the game. I do wish there were still some elements that haven't been here since WWE 13, like grabbing weapons from the crowd and spearing opponents through the barricade, but the features that are here do make an impact. Lastly, we're going to talk about the different game modes WWE 2K25 has to offer. There are 4 I want to talk about: Universe, MyRISE, Showcase, and what we'll start with, My GM. I played a bit of it, and I have only one note in this Google Doc pertaining to it, and it simply says, whatever. Moving on to Universe mode, this is actually my favorite part of these games, despite being the part that changes the least. I will say that most people will probably not care about Universe mode, but the reason I like it is because I like the storytelling in wrestling a bit more than the actual in-ring stuff, and this is essentially fantasy booking, and so because of that element of it, a lot of the merit in Universe mode is, frankly, pretending. It's essentially a more advanced version of playing with wrestling action figures. And so the more the game is able to bridge together the actual features and gameplay to your fantasy booking, the less you have to make up and the better the experience is. And they bridge that experience pretty well. They added promos, primary tag teams for factions, like the Kabuki Warriors being the go-to tag team for damage control, and my favorite addition, actual structured match tournaments for the King and Queen of the Ring. Even then though, there's still some roadblocks you just have to pretend aren't there and sometimes really impede on the experience. This immersion is built on freedom, so why can you only have 5 matches on Raw and SmackDown when you could have like 9 in 2K24? While a 5-match card is realistic for a weekly show, I wish that they were defaulted to 5 a week, but you had the ability to add more. Yeah, adding promos is cool, but there are no voice lines, which I fully understand is a lot to ask for, but there aren't even any captions. There's very few options for and in promos, and some of them lead to absolutely nothing. I had AJ Styles call out Cody Rhodes, and Cody just didn't show up. How exciting. The winners of the King and Queen of the Ring tournaments do get a world title shot at SummerSlam, like they actually programmed that to defaultly happen, which is really cool, but there's no crowning animation with Triple H at the end of the matches or anything. You still can't organically have match run-ins, that character payback is completely useless. You can only announce Money in the Bank cash-ins for PLEs, so no creating the heist of the century or doing what Damian Priest did at the latest WrestleMania. And you can't even just do normal rivalry actions at PLEs. But I really wish they had more environmental effects in Universe mode. Like usually both nights of WrestleMania last so long that they start when the sun is still up, which they do accommodate for by having day and night versions of the Mania arena. But it would have been so cool if in Universe mode, instead of unchangeably defaulting to the night version, they were relative to where they were on the card. Like, I would love if they were all at night if there were 3 matches or less. The first match was during the day if there were 4 to 6 matches, and any more than 6, the first 2 were during the day. And same with Survivor Series. In real life, they have to accommodate for War Games by having every other match on the card have 2 rings. And while it annoys me to no end that they insist on doing it, it would have been cool to have that reflected in Universe mode. 2K really did try their hardest to let you imagine as little as possible and be able to realize in-game as much as you want to, but those limitations that are still there really do stick out like a sore thumb in this game mode. But WWE 2K25 has another game mode with some creative input from the player, and that is this year's MYRISE. This is pretty much my career from the other sports games, they just felt like being different this time, and it allows you to live the dream of being a WWE superstar. And with this game's stellar character creation, I got to live that dream with near lifelike accuracy. And this may be my bias kicking in, but it is exactly what I would want from being a professional wrestler, and that's working with CM Punk and winning titles that do not exist with my ex-girlfriend, Homer Simpson. This may sound like I'm being unnecessarily mean, but I am being frank with you when I say that MYRISE has just about one example of genuine creativity. They poke fun at WWE's habit of unnecessarily unifying titles by creating the Unity and Unify tag titles and unifying them, becoming the Unified Unity tag team titles via a unification match. They created 2 new titles. Congratulations, that's about it. Every other new thing either comes from you, with how they let you choose how your 2 wrestlers know each other and what your wrestling background is, or by copying something else. They literally could not be bothered to make 2 MYRISE storylines like usual and just combined them. And here is that combined MYRISE story, by the way. Your character is the future of WWE, and during the draft, you get attacked by some masked dude. You and your old wrestling partner then spend most of the campaign fighting against the masked dudes group called Mutiny that's trying to take over the company and consists of old and current NXT superstars and later led by CM Punk. That is almost exactly 1-to-1 with the group Nexus and their storyline from 2010 and 11, even down to being led by CM Punk. You have got to be kidding me. This is one of the biggest shortcuts I have ever seen 2K take. A company built on necessarily taking shortcuts because they insist on releasing a game yearly. And guess how they resolve this story? They go back to the well! Your partner betrays you, and to get control of the company back, you can either team up with WWE legends, very creative, random jobbers, very creative, or old MYRISE characters. One of the options to finish this MYRISE campaign is to reference the old MYRISE campaigns. And no one wants to team with people they don't care about, so I'm not going with the jobbers, which left me with the legends. I ended up picking the Dudley Boys and Lita, and no shade on them, they're rad. Probably my second favorite tag team ever, and one of the most influential women in this business. But if I'm gonna be honest, I only picked them because I couldn't pick Kurt Angle, or Batista, or Triple H, or HBK, or The Rock, or Rikishi, or Goldberg. And let's look at my characters' actual success stories. Sure, we saved the company, but what else happened? Well, my character talked like a Reddit mod.
We used to date, so yeah, I'd say I know them very well.
I slammed the X button as wrestlers talked to me about absolutely nothing. I won a fake tag team championship. Homer Simpson pretended to be a witch and boiled a cauldron. I got into a prank war with the Judgment Day, which led to me electrocuting JD McDonough, and I got my ass beat. Why would you name a story My Rise, as in My Rise to Fame and Legacy, when you legitimately never even see a world championship or even a mid-card championship on screen? The cover athlete never even shows up! I cannot imagine how I could have liked this story less, and I'm frankly appalled that they thought anyone would be happy to essentially relive the biggest blemish of John Cena's career. The best feature of this mode is that because wrestlers are performers, they're capable of reading lines well off a script. But other than that, 0 points for MYRISE. And finally, we're at the last thing I think is really worth talking about with this game, and the addition this game is pretty much themed around the Bloodline Showcase. I'm gonna be real, this series has a pretty solid track record with showcases. Beating John Cena, breaking the streak, reliving WrestleMania history, these were all solid game modes. And I'm very happy to say that the version built on the biggest dynasty in wrestling history is very slow to disappoint. Beating John Cena was a really smart call, as no one wants to play as the same wrestler for 20 matches, and for a long time he was booked as completely unbeatable. And just like John Cena, the Bloodline's failures are much rarer and therefore more monumental than their victories. So going back and righting those wrongs that never should have taken place is a brilliant idea. Wish they stuck to that idea. Yeah, so they start the showcase off with the night we all thought Dean Ambrose was coming back, Undertaker threw sweats and a beanie on, and when Cody Rhodes' reign of terror started. A night I acknowledge as the benchmark of my life going downhill. Listen, I have nothing against Cody Rhodes, the person. I just hate everything about his character. John Cena aired out every emotion I've had towards him for 2 years now. I understand he brought together MLK and Malcolm X. I respect that. That was huge. But what did I ever do in this world to deserve someone like Cody Rhodes going out at the 2024 Royal Rumble and going into business for himself? What? And trust me, this isn't sour grapes, but the fact that Cody is in the main event of WrestleMania this year and AJ Styles isn't makes me sick. Anyway, this is a night that is not my favorite, and this may seem biased, and I understand starting off with where it ended, but the fact that you never redo and fix the night where the greatest title run in the entire Bloodline dynasty ended, the night Roman Reigns' 1,316-day title reign ends, doesn't sit right. They ignore that loss, but have you win matches the Bloodline has already won in real life, like the Usos' Hell in a Cell match against the New Day, and Solo Sikoa's victory over Carmelo Hayes for the NXT North American belt. Speaking of, I genuinely would have liked to see you get the upper hand over Roman as Solo and win the title at SummerSlam in his match against Rhodes. You do get to pick your sides with the unbelievably good War Games match back in November between the new and old Bloodlines, but like I said, you can't do 5v5, so it's advertised as no honorary Usos. That's right, no CM Punk, no Bronson Reed, just each of the core fours. You know how there's only been one person referred to as an honorary Uso in WWE history? Yeah, he's in the match. But there's only one person I can say without a doubt is better at glazing Roman Reigns on this planet than me, and that is the wise man, Mr. ECW, the guy who got slammed through an announce table for the love of the game, Paul Heyman. This guy gets you more excited to play these matches than I think anyone could. Getting him to present this showcase was genius. He gets you so hyped up to fight everyone while also giving you a history lesson. I had no clue Umaga was with Rosie under the name Jamal in 3 Minute Warning. Frankly, I didn't know about 3 Minute Warning. I learned about Tamina's existence when I saw her in the 2K24 roster and did not care. Then they did the lead up to her ladder match, and now I know how badass she is. And after hyping up each match, he gets dead quiet about Seth and Roman. He makes you feel the gravity of their rivalry. He's such a showman. My only problem with these presentations is how they don't match with the gameplay at times, like how Paul tells you to take your time fighting AOP, but every objective needs to be done within 3-minute segments. Same with how they rightfully so talk incredibly highly of Yokozuna, a sumo wrestler, and you play the match and they show him walking out with Mr. Fuji with the Japanese flag. So why is it exactly that they're hyping up this Japanese man? Yeah, he isn't. It was a Samoan man by the name of Rodney, and they never address it. But frankly, that's fine. I like them committing to the story, and really, Who cares? Yoko was amazing, and they show so much respect in how they talk about him, especially in Roman's and Solo's interviews. I will say, there's more than 2 people in the bloodline. It would have been great to see interviews from the Usos, Rikishi, The Rock, or even Nia Jax, especially since you play as all of those people. But I really respect and appreciate how much attention they put into the showcase mode, featuring some of my favorite wrestlers of all time. WWE 2K25 is a perfect example of the 2K philosophy. All that they do is build on what they've already done and never fix the foundation. And it's not all their fault. It takes a long time to develop a game, and they're only given a year. It's why there was such a leap in quality in the old SmackDown vs. Raw games. They could get more done in that time. But they just keep building up this Jenga tower no matter how many holes it creates, and eventually it's gonna crash. I'm gonna be 100% honest. At the time that I finished this script, I've had the game for 12 days and had already put in an embarrassing 48 hours into it. Is this game good? Whatever, man. This is like my Destiny or Call of Duty where I'm gonna play it anyways. If you don't like wrestling, this is probably gonna be like a 3 or 4 out of 10. Why would you care? But as a wrestling fan and weighing out my enjoyment of it with my critiques and this game's many flaws, I gotta give it like a 6 out of 10. But the bright side is, at least 2K can hold their head high, knowing that that score is about 6 points higher than I'd give Cody Rhodes' title reign.